Arrogant boss fires expert, leading to pound 800K project disaster. Sweet revenge unfolds, but the story ends in tragedy. Who am I? Do you know? It backfires on an egotistical manager when a $800,000 project goes off course because he sacked an invaluable staff member. First of all, this never happened to me. I was with the individual when they got a call concerning this problem. Then he walked me through it all. He is not on Reddit, hence I am sharing it. It is valuable. Every name has been modified to guard corporate and personal identities. The plot depends much on listed structures. There is a mechanism in place in the UK for maintaining historic and significant constructions. A building deemed historically significant is referred to as a listed building. The guidelines for its evolution, preservation, and enhancement are rather rigorous. I have to be obscure about the labor involved. Else, it would be too simple to name the people engaged. David, a buddy of mine, is quite specialized in a very small field of building. Using a very ancient building technique not used for several millennia, he fixes and renovates buildings. His whole output focuses on listed buildings and conservation projects. Work needed on a Grade 1 listed property. ACC Limited, the major contractor, was handling the building generally. There is quite specific study on one aspect. The architect provided a list of suitable candidates as the contractor management knew no one who had done it. The contractors selected my friend since he was most available early on. 5 days into the project, the major contractor, ACC Limited, arrived on site. David's words? He was a boisterous gobshite throwing his weight about. David ignored him while he was merely working. One of his carpenters was directed by the boisterous gobshite to make him coffee. The carpenter vanished. The noisy gobshite kept prowling and grumbling about delays costing him a lot of money. The boisterous gobshite asked my pal a question 15 minutes after the carpenter vanished. "Where's that chippy with my coffee?" asked a noisy gobshite. Chippy = carpenter. Chippy = carpenter. David, I'm not clear. Go and find out, a noisy gobshite says. David, I'm only here for this job, gesturing at the walls. I work for ACC Limited, not for you. Noisy gobshite. It makes no difference if you're an employee or a subcontractor. You still are working for me. Now go and locate my coffee. David. First of all, I find it offensive to be spoken to like manners. Second, my contract with you is to do these walls, nothing else. I most definitely am not a gopher. Noisy gobshite. Oh, do you not value being spoken to in such a manner? For which subcontractor do you now work? David. None. I run my business alone, just me. Noisy gobshite. A day laborer. And you have the guts to address me in such a manner? Do you know my name? David. Sure. Well, you're fired. A noisy gobshite says. Get out of the premises right away. David says, okay. Just get off the site, says a noisy gobshite. David grabbed out his phone and started recording. David. Okay, I'll leave. Just want evidence you advised me to leave. Grabbing David's hand containing the phone, a noisy gobshite yelled into the phone, "Get off the site, you idiot," a noisy gobshite says. You're let off. I'll have you thrown out if you're still here in 10 minutes. David. Cool, not problematic. He took up his gear and left. The contractor's site manager passed him, ironically with a coffee for the boss, as he was leaving and smiled. Site manager. Dave, you're leaving early? Bloody part-time kidding. David, no, your boss just sacked me. We have signed out our contract. Apologies, friend. The site manager said, No. Allow me to arrange things here. Please wait, kindly. David left the site. Knowing something the boisterous gobshite lacked, the site manager was losing his head. In the UK, just 7 persons are certified to handle the task. Every one of them had a waiting list. David had been the only one accessible. 12 missed calls by the time he arrived home. That was Thursday, 2 working days absent so far. He claimed he would go back only if he was paid for the extra days and personally apologized to the employer. I met my friend as he was answering a call from the site manager, stating the boss apologies but is out of the country, so cannot apologize personally. David also informed me he warned the other specialist over the phone, but they had all been contacted on Friday asking to be assigned work. Nobody picked up the work. They were all booked full. To warn him, David also called the architect. Under such circumstances, some dishonest builders attempt to falsify the work and bodge the job. David is going to keep his guns. Money for all missing days plus a face-to-face apologies. He is positive he will grasp it. I mentioned I would pay anything to see the in-person apologies. Update 1. The site manager called to inform David he was advised by the noisy gobshite to threaten legal action should David fail to complete his work. The site manager became really ashamed and apologetic. David reminded him he left and had documentation proving he was let go. The site manager called once more to inform the noisy gobshite will be personally apologizing on Friday. Could David begin tomorrow? David said no. Following the legal action threat, the criteria are different. Before work starts, a face-to-face apology. Additional compensation for lost days. Paying the whole contract value up front before work starts. All of this has to happen on Thursday. He can start today and still expect to finish before his next reservation. Should he work weekends as well, he has just enough time. I questioned him about why he isn't charging the man who is such a wanker a hefty extra fee. He remarked it's not the done thing to take advantage of businesses under time constraints, it looks bad. One of my pals apparently is a guy from the 18th century. Edit. When David mentioned just 7 others do this work, I misinterpreted him. He intended 7 different companies distinct from his own. Since they are small companies, he argues it is most likely just about 20 persons capable of doing it. Still a limited amount, although not as humorally tiny as 7. I apologize for misled all of you regarding the count. Update 2, sadly, an apology appears unlikely. David has found that the site manager was sacked for not alerting the noisy gobshite of the circumstances earlier. David told the operations director for ACC Limited, the second noisy gobshite, that he would not be returning to the position, so an apology is not needed. Apologizing for everything, the operations director promised to very liberally renegotiate the money. David informed him he had only thought about returning to the position as a personal courtesy to the original site manager. He feels no need to go back as he is not there. The operations director indicated he will contact David but omitted any explanation. Why he didn't say, "Give him his job back," or "I won't come back," I wondered. David remarked the boisterous gobshite is too weak and petty to be guided by a craftsman. It will have to be the concept of the company for the site manager returning. They won't bring him back if I order them to. David thinks it's difficult to obtain a job at 61 since the site manager is excellent at his work but only 4 years from retirement. I have decided that David appeals to me even more than 3 days before. 3 updates. It is 2 in the morning here. We just came out of the bar. David answered a call from the dismissed site manager while we were out. David reported the circumstances to the architect this afternoon. The architect got in touch with the terminated site manager to let him know about a company needing a site manager. Just before 9 p.m., the dismissed site manager called David. I had to sit through the one-sided phone call. I had to have looked like I had a house full of sparrows, childishly thrilled. Then David filled in for me. The site manager rang to thank him and find out his preferred drinks so he might bring him a bottle. He is seeing them on Friday even though he does not yet have the new job. The architect is hopeful since apparently his advice has some weight. David first rejected. David, I didn't not get you a job. The architect done. Site manager. But you told the architect I had been sacked because of you, therefore you set all this in motion. I never have to deal with that annoying pillock ever once again. David left no clear identification for the irritable pillock. We will have to conjecture. David mentioned his drink is Cardhu Gold Reserve. He declared he would only take a bottle if, A, the site manager lands the new position. B, should the site manager visit and sip the Cardhu with David. The whiskey consumption does not seem to include the attractive scribe who painstakingly and time-consumingly skillfully recorded this narrative down on Reddit. David elegantly said, "Piss off, knobhead, you can get your own drink." Except that nobody gets to see the tosspot noisy gobshite eat crow when he has to apologize. All excellent news ideally. I had great anticipation about that. David and the sacked site manager know each other outside of the office. Though 2 separate clubs, they are members of charitable organizations in the same location and cooperate extensively. David is Roundtable, whereas the site manager belongs to the Rotary Club. Though you never know, I doubt he is a knight. David was contacted by the operations director of ACC Limited to propose that they kindly renegotiate the money by bringing the site manager back. They have missed the boat, David says. He cannot finish the work on his own before beginning his next employment. Should all go without a hitch, there is an absolute minimum of 11 days labor left. David's next employment begins on November 4th. Assuming he works weekends, there are 10 days left. Last minute. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when the noisy gobshite is informed. Many people often ask, what does David do? If I said what it was, it would be quite identifying. I could as well tell you his actual name and address. Apologize. There are extremely few of them since it takes 5 years to become just competent and at least 9 years to be a master artisan. At least one master present is needed for the jobs done. Update 4, bad news. The site manager who was sacked did not land the other position. He met the new company, but they are not extending an invitation to him. The explanations are not obvious. David is seeing him Sunday to go over it. Though David is not at blame, I can sense he feels guilty about it. The site manager claims he will act regarding unjust firing. Though I imagine this would be a win-win-win, I suppose life isn't like that. News about the sacked site manager. The current state of affairs is not as dire as first assumed. We misinterpreted what transpired on Friday. David chatted with him yesterday. That aspect is accurate. The employer he visited on Friday is not hiring him in the usual manner. On a distribution center build, they have, however, presented him with a fixed-term contract spanning 18 months. Though not ideal, on the plus side it pays somewhat more than ACC. Though just 18 months, it is better than nothing. Should another project surface, the new business also has the option to extend the contract. David has heard that someone Bulgarian is visiting to cover for the work. David was grinning when he informed me. He believes he understands exactly what will happen. Some 19th century Sophian structures feature a comparable but different method that was used. David believes the man will apply such an approach. Though two extremely crucial elements are different, it looks comparable. David has opted to hold off. David is going to advise the client and the planning department to verify the two components. He intends to allow the Bulgarian to finish the job and get paid. The Bulgarian will have used the incorrect tools unless he is familiar with the English approach from the 17th century. It would mean pulling it apart and beginning over. They treat this kind of work quite rigorously. Though I hardly desire this, I truly hope this comes true. I'm a minor dude. More info. Many people are wondering when David would find out whether the Bulgarian performed the work as expected. Given that there are few vendors of one of the materials, David might know really quickly. Should the Bulgarian get in touch, David will be informed. David said, "It's a tiny incestuous part of the industry, and they gossip like old women." Correction. Like older women, we all gossip. David is leaving it alone till told the work is done and the Bulgarian is paid if he does not visit there. He wants not to jeopardize the man's money. David said, "I don't want the Bulgarian to drag his arse over here and go home empty-handed just because I can't wait to drop silly bollocks. The man has a living to support him. I'm going to wait. Silly bollocks is the same person as noisy gobshite just in case of uncertainty. Unless he works weekends, the Bulgarian should finish his job in 3 weeks. David will know when the work is done as he knows several people at ACC head office and several on site. I must thus wait on my hands for 3 to 4 weeks and appear to be a non-excited 7-year-old girl not complaining about Christmas approaching." Update 5. According to David, the Bulgarian got right to it and began working. Materials have been delivered, but from an ordinary building supplier. Though they sell it in Bulgaria, the items he requires for the work are too heavy for him to carry with him. He hasn't asked for it from the UK provider. 3, but only one has enough for this work since David brought it in for her. He is therefore not using the correct materials unless he is arriving by road and ferry. Though he was not bothered by raucous gobshite, David would not let it go unrecorded. He is a purist in terms of historical accuracy and truly enjoys maintaining all the structures he works on. I therefore have to hold my water for 3 to 4 weeks. David claims he might finish earlier if he uses more contemporary materials. If you stay in the 17th century, 3 weeks is the period. About this work, I have become such a weirdo. David knew I was after information after I phoned him earlier under cover of pretext. "Do you want me to fit a body cam so you can watch and hear everything as it happens?" David asked me. I answered, "That would be great if it would not be too much trouble and you could link me into your phone calls." Laughing, David said, "You knob cheese, is it okay if I cover the lens when I'm shagging my wife?" Personal Ollie, I don't do those two things at the same time, but whatever floats your boat, I said. David, you are telling me you do them separately. Me? Right after she washed all the garbage off the sheets after doing you. A few of us are finicky. David said, "Piss off, you're an uptight clean freak." Hangs. Not farewell, not see you shortly. English behavior is not what it once was. Though I realize it doesn't look like it, really I do have a life. I never would have thought I would be typing Update 6 when I originally started working on this. Update 6. Many news stories. 2 weeks ago the Bulgarian completed his work and returned home. Those who met Stefan the Bulgarian said he was a decent man and a really diligent worker. He worked weekends and 12-hour days to help to offset the expenses of living in the UK. David is glad he waited until Stefan paid before he reported the work, knowing what he discovered about Stefan. David already felt rather certain Stefan was not performing as required. None of the 3 companies he checked, the sole UK suppliers of the most unusual substance involved in the job, said they had an order for the site. Stefan might have imported it, of course, but nobody on site had seen an international material order. As scheduled, David thus made calls to the client, the architect, the local authority planning department, and Historic England. He waited for them to investigate after outlining his worries in the simplest, least invasive manner possible. Though it just took a few days, I can really say that I have never been that nervous or committed in anything unrelated to my pissing business. The architect produced the first report on incorrect materials and technique applied. Not the English one demanded, he had applied a Bulgarian technique from the 19th century rather than the 17th. The architect was really agitated. David Avid stated this phone call was blue, but he had never heard the architect using foul words before. The architect apparently termed the boisterous gobshite, ignorant cockwomble. David defined a womble for me. I knew nothing. Approach is welcome. Not wanting people to believe this was anything to do with him, the architect said he was going to get in touch with the local authorities. Most of the remainder came to David's second or third hand. He knows some of the staff from ACC. I wanted to know whether it was challenging to get them to tell him anything. He mentioned they lacked the quick adequate phone pickup ability. The location was visited and the work examined by the local government planning officials. They informed the contractor that the work had to be cleared and corrected since it was totally improper. Then it became fascinating. Looking about the property, the inspectors discovered a problem. It would be too simple to pinpoint the buildings involved, hence I cannot be exact about this. The builder had wrecked some of the structure. Though it was not very significant, there was an internal feature included into the roof construction. Although they were not let to, they removed it and replaced it with a far superior modern support. The project manager, the new site manager, or staff member neither understood the significance. Who ordered it to be replaced with a cheap, quick alternative rather than the slow, expensive, rebuilt option? Of course, it was noisy gobshite. Destroying anything on this kind of property is illegal, jail sentence type of crime. It's a huge fine even if they avoid jail. Everyone in that company is thus pointing fingers at one another and claiming no accountability right now. According to Noisy Gobshite, he did not direct the internal roof structural components to be removed. The project manager has email proving he did. The client asked all of the contractor's employees off the site on Tuesday, the 19th. They are currently looking over everything. They're most definitely firing the contractor. They have written guidelines for bids from fresh contractors. They will also sue the contractor for the expenses of undoing and fixing all they have done improperly. The architect's projection came at £800,000. The local government planning department wrote to the contractor detailing their mistakes and alerting them of their intentions for inspection and the likelihood of prosecution. On the day the letter arrived, Noisy Gobshite vanished to the lawyers, claims the staff. Within an hour, David received 3 calls from 3 separate ACC phones as word of the letter spread around the workforce. Now we are awaiting a few things. 1. The client's checkup. Should that prove ACC has damaged the site, the client is entitled to terminate the contractor. ACC has a huge repair debt and does not get paid. 2. Local authority inspections conducted by conservationists. Should they have destroyed elements of the property, the local government will punish ACC as a company and the individual responsible. David is rather disappointed since it is impossible to rebuild the internal framework lost. That was sitting there performing its job for 400 years until that gist stain enters the picture, he said. It goes then, and that is it, never again. He comes across as really depressed. I'm guessing Noisy Gobshite is yearning he had his own coffee that day last month. Edit, the letter to ACC, not their actual name, did not threaten a prosecution. It simply made them aware of the intention of the planning department to send a professional to check the construction and, more especially, the changed area. Apparently, should prosecution take place, it takes eternity. My real apologies for misleading all of you. Like everyone else, I was overly eager to grab my pitchfork and start believing the worst. Wishful thinking mixed with Chinese whispers meant that the story was far more serious and advanced by the time it reached David. Though it's more likely to be in 6 months than in 6 days, Noisy Gobshite may well be prosecuted. Since I started, that represents the second correction. I promise to try to be a little more deliberate on next revisions. My error, not David's. David cautioned me that not everything that comes in your ears has to flow directly out of your tongue. You're very eager to feed the masses. Although they might believe you're currently farting rainbows, if you make a bollocks of the data, this won't last. Like always, he is correct. As uncomfortably customary. Information asked. A few have inquired about the fate of the sacked original site manager, But I wasn't sure until now. We met in the pub, David, the site manager, 2 others also. Subject to fidelity insurance checks, he most certainly has the new job. His starting date is February 9th. ACC paid him off in place of notice. Firing is done according to convention. They paid him just over 3.5 months' wages in one lump as his contract provided 3 months' notice and he was due 12 holiday/6/vacation days. He also gets to retain the car till March. I was shaking like a dog when he fired me, he added, but the wife reminded me that I could take my pension early and how much I hate that company, especially that dodgy pillage. I stopped worrying when the architect contacted me about the distribution center job. He started the new work on a somewhat better pay after landing it. The main drawback is that the employment is just guaranteed for 18 months. Although it's not certain, there's a great chance the organization will retain him following that if they have work. He first intended to bring Noisy Gobshite to an industrial tribunal for unjust dismissal. Now he won't since he won't suffer financially. Obviously, I'm glad I'm not losing money, he remarked, but I was looking forward to beating that Watson in court. He is building a better sleigh and several reindeer with the additional time right now. Certainly, a sleigh. It's on the rear of a truck. Father Christmas is on the sleigh performing Christmas carols at window-rattling volume, gathering money for charity while his company strolls the area decked as elves and snowmen. I have oftentimes been pulled into it. He brought David the promised whiskey. David advised he shouldn't, but the site manager remarked, "Why, Yorkshire men keep their word, even to a shower of soft shandy-sipping southerners like Ulan. Besides, I'm not risking breaking this lucky streak." Even the alcohol came at half price. Simultaneously pointing at him, David and I said, "A real Yorkshireman." For the uninitiated, Yorkshire residents are known for 2 things: highly straightforward communication and financial restraint. We left the pub after ridiculing him for implying that I was a southerner and headed to the garage of the site manager so we could sip the whiskey and appreciate his sleigh building work. Would they send me some freebies if I told you all how great Cardhu Gold Reserve tastes? Born close to Carnarvon, Saeeglf, I'm Welsh and am sobbing and bith, hence you have most likely seen some awful grammar. I'm full of whiskey, so right now I'm debating. It is past my bedtime. 1 a.m. Bye for now. Update 7. I believe there might be some karmic justice en route. Interviews under control have been conducted with Noisy Gobshite. It indicates they are ready for the possibility rather than that they are absolutely suing him. They will also do so with the sacked site manager next week. They also followed the same process with the project manager. The site manager is sure he has nothing to concern about. He was sacked, hence the decision was taken to remove the pieces of roof support. He added he was sure the Noisy Gobshite would have sought to assign culpability to a site manager if he had been present at the time of the illegal modification. He said, "That cowardly slope-shouldered turd would have shot all over me to save his own skin." Fortunately, the project manager has evidence in the form of an email proving Noisy Gobshite ordered the task. Noisy Gobshite sought to convince him not to forward it on to the local authority planning department. He threatened him when that didn't work. That backfired when the project manager told the investigators that Noisy Gobshite instructed him to delete the email in addition to neglecting the risks. My buddy, a lawyer, informs me that destroying evidence and meddling with a witness are crimes in of themselves. Noisy Gobshite will not stop excavating a deeper hole. If he gets away without facing legal repercussions, I will be really let down. He is nevertheless, clearly in pain. The major story of the week? Noisy Gobshite has been let off. After learning from no less than 4 separate ACC workers, David announced it yesterday, Saturday. They eagerly wanted to tell him, he said. Then the discussion followed this pattern. Me, how is that feasible? How does the owner find himself let off? Did he stroll up to a mirror and declare, "You're as much use as Anne Frank's drum kit, you're fired"? David, nope. You know he inherited the company from his uncle and dad. Me, exactly. David said, you know his brother and cousin own a slice each. Me. Anyway. David? They fired him since their combined share is over 50%. Louise, the accounts manager, told me they are pissing their pants. As long as the money came in, they were content to leave Noisy Gobshites in charge, but today their golden goose seems very sick. Losing this contract and the fees and penalties scares them since it will close the company. They therefore ask the customer owner to bring ACC back to complete the deal. Part of that is persuading the building owner that Noisy Gobshite has nothing bearing on the business. Clearly, they are putting Noisy Gobshite beneath the bus. According to Louise, a Noisy Gobshite fired at him with screaming and violent threats. He required escort off the property. He has been phoning staff members, posing queries, and acts shocked when individuals refuse to assist him. Louise claims he truly wants to be loyal to him and thinks the staff like him. The man is in cloud cuckoo land, she declared. Me? He will be really offended. I wish I could have seen the face of Numpty as it was developing. David says, it's nothing that the scrot doesn't deserve. I promised the person who told me I wouldn't tell anyone yet, hence there is another, but I can't tell you about it. Me? You tease. What relevance does it have? David. It's significant. Transformational for the theme in life. Me? I wish I could tell you. It nearly gave me a hard-on. Me? Fing hell, it must be big if it can get that ugly appending to do anything except hang there like the last chicken in the shop. David. What a drama this is. She believes I should share with her this confidentially anything I learned. Given our marriage, she expects me to be able to tell her everything. I said it's not something I keep secret. Though I had hoped I would get, I appreciate you have integrity, dear husband. No. Mrs. here is enraged since she believes I'm a knobhead. Louise's employment title and name have been changed to defend the innocent. I don't want any of you holding your breath. It looks like it will be a few months before he can provide me with this fantastic news. The building owner, client has completed their inspection. 2 portions are unacceptable, the damaged section and the one David ought to have completed but Stefan did instead. They are rather unhappy. Usually, the local government believes it's the owner cutting corners when listed structures are harmed. In this instance though, the owner is an austere ancient institution committed to maintaining significant structures. They didn't enjoy having to establish they had nothing to do with the building's damage as they are not used to being accused of anything dubious. David stated it appears they have written off ACC since they have made a type of tendering request to multiple other firms specialized in conservation. Then he spewed a bunch of jargon I neither knew or recall. Me? They have asked a few firms to quote a price for the job in simple English. David says, that's a very simplified way of describing it, but I don't have the time or the crayons to explain it to you. Me? Okay, let us say they are requesting job-related prices. Condescending, hence I was anticipating this tale would develop to a crescendo with noisy gobshites suffering something terrible. But it's just sort of faded with a whimper while we wait to find out what legal action will be pursued. Real life moves slowly, quite inconveniently. January 21, 2020. Hi there, this is Mark's wife. The moron requested me to apologize to the internet for his silence. On January 7th he was injured in an automobile accident. Though he won't be online for a little, we are confident he will fully recover. I explained it's only Reddit, but he's a compulsive freak about not disappointing others. I thus assured them I will include Reddit in the list. Here I am, informing all the folks he doesn't know why he hasn't finished imparting something they most likely aren't reading anyhow. March 2nd, 2020. Hello Mark, once more his wife. Direct messages numbered more than 200. I appreciate all of your remarks as well as your wishing of him well. I have read them all to him. I'll address the 3 most often asked questions. Mark's situation changed what? A big lorry drove straight into the rear of him while he was still stationary in his automobile about to exit the freeway. Between that lorry and the lorry ahead of Mark, his automobile was destroyed. Among his multiple shattered bones are nose, left orbital and cheekbone, left radius and ulna, forearm, left hand, right tibia and fibula, lower leg, and 4 ribs, one of which pierced his left lung. His left eye's center vision is somewhat damaged, however we hope this is transient. He needs more surgery since he has some tendon damage in his right hand and has 112 stitches overall. Though he looks like a wreck, he might heal free from any serious damage. If it were me, I wouldn't cope, but for as long as I have known him, he has always been as hard as nails. I went to pieces when I initially arrived at the hospital and he was lying there covered in blood, cables and tubes and couldn't talk properly. In minutes, he had me giggling. He has always been really adept in knowing the appropriate response. Not being able to use his hands is the thing most bothering him right now. When ought he to change the narrative? It might take some time. Though I could ask the guy David contacted for an update, I most certainly cannot tell a narrative like Mark can. I'm obviously biased, but Mark seems to be the most entertaining man I have ever met. I start to laugh so much I cannot breathe as he and David get going. I have advised him to temporarily forget about everything but getting well. If it starts to disturb him though, I've told him I'll do some secretary role-playing and he may write the narrative to me. He will finish it. He always finishes what he starts on. I wish my self-discipline was 100th that of his. A few have inquired whether they might give him money, cards, or gifts to cover missed income or medical expenditures. Thank you so much for offering, but it's not necessary. As we live in the UK, Fortunately, healthcare is free. He wants none of anyone's money. There is a long-standing charity we have sponsored called Macmillan Cancer Support if anyone feels driven to do something. At last update. Knowing who I am would help you. The David against boisterous gobshite narrative. The 22nd of May 2020. Slough mainly grunted, "This username belonged to Mark, my spouse." He penned the narrative on his friend David and a company owner he referred to as noisy gobshite. Up until he was in a January vehicle accident, Mark had been updating the narrative. He requested me then to let everyone know he was hurt and to update the narrative after he recovered. Mark sadly died barely over a week after my previous comment. Everyone thought he was healing, but he passed out and died extremely rapidly without warning. Although the team did all they could to save him, his aorta had burst. They claimed it is not unusual in auto collisions and had most likely been damaged during the accident. Although I'm sorry I didn't update this earlier, to be honest I totally neglected this page. I discovered how many people were waiting for Mark to wrap up the narrative only after I returned to go over Mark's words once more. Though I'm not sure how many people will view this update, would you kindly forward this news to everyone you know who was waiting for Mark to respond? Many thanks. I appreciate the hundreds of people that posted get well notes for Mark. I'm sorry I ignored you all for so long. But for the past 3 months I've been bewildered. Mark would have chastised me and most certainly objected to my leaving everyone in uncertainty. Many thanks to the persons who sent Macmillan Cancer Support money. Though it seems odd to have money given in the name of mostly Gruntled. At last, I want to thank the moderators, especially /u/Marari01, for guiding me and outlining how I might notify everyone. Monday, May 24, 2020. For the wonderful messages and virtual hugs I have seen over the past day, I am most grateful. For hours I have shed tears. One finds it difficult to define what good sobbing is when one loses someone. Those who have lost a loved one will most likely relate. Most of today has been good tears thanks to your postings and comments. Your thoughts have helped me to consider all of Mark's amazing traits and all the reasons I so much loved him. I began working on the update, then gave up around 8 times before mustering some fortitude. I am rather happy I did it. I appreciate once more the final small push I required from the moderator, /u/Marari01. It also helps me understand that I wish to undertake one more activity Mark would have liked. He consistently brought his starting work to completion. I will find out what has happened by talking to his buddies. I'll try to get myself current with everyone's outcomes. I know some of it already. I tell you ahead of time, it will be merely the facts, not like Mark's writing. Though I lack Mark's natural storytelling ability, the comments clearly indicate that many people were hoping for a resolution. The bare facts will have to be sufficient, please forgive. I'm going to talk to David, the guy he contacted. This year he has been a total rock for me. With luck, he will be able to cover all. As soon as I can, I'll input the change. I greatly appreciate it all. You are unaware of the extent this has benefited. Friday, May 25, 2020. Mostly because to what you all wrote, yesterday I had a better day. I woke up today enraged and cannot seem to calm myself. England observes a public holiday today, and I find myself wondering what we would be doing if Mark were here. He never threw a holiday away. I'm furious since, just because some self-serving moron couldn't wait to respond to a text message, I have lost the best person I have ever known in my life. I find the stupidity and unfairness intolerable. He will spend a few years behind bars. Not one thing though, will bring my Mark back. Sorry folks. I simply needed to let out a vent. Please, kindly, avoid using your phone while driving. Also, avoid tolerating it if you notice others doing it. March 6, 2020. I want to highlight 2 points. Firstly, let me thank everyone for their comments. The lovely things you have spoken about Mark have cheered me. It took so long to tell you Mark had died since I never imagined they would. Still, you did help, even though what you said was so poignant that I broke down hundreds of times reading the great words. Second, I'm sorry for not yet answering every comment. On some days I feel I could talk about Mark all day. On others, I cannot even think of him without going to pieces. If I haven't replied to your particular comment, it's not as though I haven't read all of them. Simply said, I can't respond as I have been in a poor state portion of the time. Eventually, I will answer to everyone, much as I did very slowly with the cards during his funeral. It looked like I was climbing a mountain that wouldn't stop expanding, but I finally answered all 322 of them even though I didn't think I would get through them all. One of numerous decent habits I picked up from Mark is finishing what I start. I only want to hear him once more calling me Carrot. Carrot is a Welsh term for love. My name is not Welsh. July 27, 2020 at 3:10 a.m. Whoa, I hadn't been online for a few days and now hundreds of messages show up. I can't sleep once more, and it came to me that I could change what happened to every one of the characters Mark had penned. It's just the facts. It won't have Mark's style or humor, it's just basic knowledge. Still, it's the most I can accomplish and more than nothing. Starting in the new post on a building project for a distribution center, site manager followed plans exactly. Mark had already mentioned what David and the site manager were dissatisfied about. Though that was before the coronavirus, being on a fixed 18-month contract as a self-employed individual was a drawback when compared to being an employee. Most of the staff were let go after the virus struck. Some were furloughed. The contract required the corporation to maintain paying the site manager whole. What he considered to be a negative aspect turned out to be a saving agent. The last David could tell me about Noisy Gobshite was that he no longer owns a third as he had to sell his part of the company under pressure. Regarding his assets, he had to sign a personal liability agreement in case total obligations exceeded the company's worth. According to what I understand of it, Noisy Gobshite must pay the extra, even if it means he loses his house, if for example, the total bills for his mistakes are higher than the company can pay. They couldn't continue trading if he was participating, hence he had to give up his part of the company. He needs them to carry on paying the attorneys. Though he hasn't been charged with a crime yet, he most certainly will. Something to do with wanting to be ready to go to court once he is charged. They take their time researching and being ready before they charge him. It also came to light that he warned of similar, but somewhat more minor, damage to a listed property in 2011. According to David, some anomalies found by the local government during the inquiry were forwarded to HMRC, the taxman. Also under investigation for that scam is Noisy. One of the first remarks on Mark's post was expensive cup of coffee, an understatement if ever I've seen one. The major headlines would be on Noisy Gobshite and the sexual assault, rape, of one of the PAs in the ACC headquarters in 2017 as well as sexual harassment of other employees. Though it wasn't boisterous Gobshite, the sexual assault occurred. It was former finance director. Stories of sexual harassment of female employees have not evolved and proved to be mere gossip. David. Working on his own and without social distance problems, he's most likely one of the few persons who were not impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic both financially and practically. He has carried on rather as normal. Job is easier, he stated. The usual plonkers are not there to trip on my equipment or stick plank ends into my finished work. David is not doing personally very well. David took Mark's death worse than anyone else outside his family. He tries not to show me this. He is a rock when he is with me. He has kept me from falling. Among three persons, he is the one I feel I can truly let go concerning Mark, or so I thought. David's wife was really nice and empathetic when I spoke with her last week, but she had to tell me to hold back a little with David. Although his wife claims he is shattering, he seems strong to me. She says he has taken Mark's death extremely severely. I thought he and Mark were close friends. She claims that in all their marriage, she only saw him cry once, that of their dog's death. When his parents deceased, she missed him crying. She notes he seems lost now and has sobbed quite a few times. The worst thing to find out is that his crying period falls after his visit with me. I'm awful. He obviously was mourning, but I had no idea I was burdening him so much. I'm going to cease venting all my suffering and be more cautious utilizing him. I wish he had said sooner. Maybe I should have known about it instead of being so self-servingly preoccupied with my own loss. That is as far as I'm aware of the updates cover. They are ready to observe his charged with noise. Should he be found guilty of damaging classified buildings, he might find himself imprisoned. Should he be found guilty of fraud, he will almost surely be imprisoned. In either case, the fines will be 6 figures. David mentioned wondering whether he would like prison coffee. His sense of humor is dark. July 27, 2020, at 3:10 a.m., there were alerts for 512 private messages and comments when I first arrived online earlier. I have no idea where to start. If you have written, kindly please not assume I am not appreciative as I have not responded. I felt fit to write at 3:10 a.m., hence I updated. Right now I doubt I could accomplish it. I have been staring at our weddings video. Though I believed it might help, I feel like a bus has knocked me down. I was devastated by Mark's speech. He discussed our meeting and his return to the house he shared with fellow Royal Marines. One among them asked Mark, "What's the joke then? You're once more smiling about something. Come on, what's so funny here?" Mark claimed he couldn't and wouldn't explain it to them, he just couldn't stop smiling every time he considered our date. Every time he thought of me, he claimed, he felt that. It made me grin and started me to cry on our wedding day, but this morning it broke me. I believe the agony is growing worse rather than becoming less. It bothers me too. All through me I feel it. I can't stop it. All I can think of lately is wish I had been in the car with him if I cannot have him back. Being an atheist, he always advised, this is all you get, so don't dare waste any of it. Therefore he wouldn't approve of me harming myself. It's just so difficult to keep going with this suffering. I doubt I can. I simply want it stopped. I apologize for carrying on like way. I would convey this to those I know since they worry, but writing here is like shouting into a diary. I apologize to all of you. Though I try to control things, I miss him so much and I can't stop it hurting. What should I do is unknown. August 31st, 2020 is. Although I responded to hundreds of messages since last updating this post, I did not get through all of them. Though the screen says I still have 92 waiting. I cannot see or read any more of the messages in chat. Should you not obtain a response, you fall into the 92. Our anniversary yesterday, August 30th, though I was looking forward it, when it came it was sort of empty. I cried when I viewed our wedding film. I replied to a few messages. Halfway through one message, I became abruptly overwhelmed with the knowledge that all the happiness I will ever experience in my life had already passed by. Every future endeavor I try will just be rewritten as Mark should be here but he isn't. Everything from here till I die is simply life. Just breathing and watching the days pass. Without Mark, it seems quite meaningless. I'm not sure whether I could write ever more. I appreciate all of you volunteering your time. You're really beautiful folks. Clutch the people you love like you might lose tomorrow. Avoid doing what I did and believe you could live in your own little heavenly bubble always. In the blink of an eye, some lazy morons can destroy all you love, leaving nothing ahead of you. Bye.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.